the values are the same values Walmart's always had. And the core one, I know I'm not supposed to have favorites, but of the 4 core Walmart values, respect for individual is my favorite. And so I think if we keep that as our North Star in our inquiry around new technologies, we almost always get the right answer.
Okay, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. From Singapore to San Francisco, from Buffalo to Belfast, you're all very welcome to the latest episode of the AI Governance Podcast, and this is a really special one. I'm your host today, Ryan. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Enzai. We provide a market-leading AI governance, risk, and compliance solution. And I'm thrilled to be joined today by Nuala O'Connor, Senior Vice President and Chief Counsel of Digital Citizenship at Walmart. Before Walmart, Nuala served as President and CEO of the Centre for Democracy and Technology. And in the private sector, Nuala has also served in a wide variety of leadership and legal counsel roles at the likes of Amazon, GE, and DoubleClick. She's also worked in the public sector, so Nuala served as the first Chief Privacy Officer at the US Department of Homeland Security and has also served as the Deputy Director of the Office of Policy and Strategic Planning. She began her career in private practice law, a bit like myself, so I'm really excited to talk about that today. And a fact that many people might not know about Nuala is that she's actually originally from Belfast in Northern Ireland, where Enzai is headquartered. So I'm super excited to get into this, and we're going to dive straight in here and talk about the role of AI at Walmart. So obviously Walmart tops the Fortune 500. It is the biggest of big businesses that you could ever imagine. And you've recently shared your plans to scale the AI program at Walmart and really take advantage of the opportunity that this technology presents. What I really want to know is, how does an organization of this size and magnitude respond to both the opportunity that AI presents, but also managing all of the risks that come with it as they adopt the technology across the business?
Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you, Ryan, and to everyone listening. And thank you so much for having me. First of all, it's such a delight to be with you virtually, digitally. And what a joy to talk about the AI program and governance at Walmart. It is both a profound opportunity and responsibility to be a company of this size and to be part of the transformation and the innovation that's happening to an old line industrial company, as I like to call it, but really kind of one of the classic American brands that's really a worldwide enterprise now. And we are still hopefully humble and eager to innovate and eager to learn about what technology can do for the company and the customer. And we, most of all, I think, want to meet our customers, the human beings we serve in not only retail, but healthcare, financial services, all sorts of services and goods and services around the world. We want to meet them where they are in their use of technology and stay current with their needs and stay current with everything, the efficiencies and productivity gains that AI has to offer. I want to first start by saying, we've been using AI for a long time. Like, AI is not news. When people say you must use AI in this, I think, yeah, and I must use pencils too. You know, to me, it's just a tool, and it's one of the many tools that we should explore. And most importantly, it should be fit for purpose. And that's, I think, probably part of the role that my team plays, is asking the questions kind of, yes, and this is a good idea. Is this the right tool for this enterprise at this project at this time? And what are both the opportunities and the risks? So when I say we've been using AI, I joke that it's not really the privacy of the apples or the bananas that I'm worried about. And what I mean by that is, we've been using AI in things like food safety for years. You know, if conveyor belt goes by and the vision technology can tell, is that a ripe banana? Is that, fit for purpose? Is it good for the customer? Is it safe? There's all sorts of things about meat food safety I can talk to you about that are really helped by computer vision and artificial intelligence. So that's all to the good. When we're talking about consequential AI into the human being, it's about making decisions that impact a human being's life, their livelihood, their opportunity, and their access to information. And so when we're looking at models of AI that are impactful to our customers or associates, we obviously look to see, is it making the right decision? Is it making good decisions? Is it making fair decisions? Is it transparent to the individual, the customer or associate? And how do we help that human being learn? learn about how the technology works, learn about the decisions that are made and the consequences of them, and take that knowledge out into the world in their relationships with other companies. Because I think at the core, our value proposition is we think we're doing it right. Our job is to make sure that we are using technology and data in the right way, in a respectful way, and in a helpful way to our customers and to our associates. So it's a great big enterprise, but I think the values are the same values Walmart's always had. And the core one, I know I'm not supposed to have favorites, but of the 4 core Walmart values, respect for individual is my favorite. And so I think if we keep that as our North Star in our inquiry around new technologies, we almost always get the right answer.
I love it. And this is something that I talk a lot about in this space where, yes, some of the technologies are new, but really humans have developed a lot of really good risk management techniques and strategies over the years that are just as applicable at the frontier as they are at many other, your values are just as you can apply those in the AI space, and you can apply those across the entire business with everything you do. And I think that is a real good way to look at it. And I know you took some steps to codify this with the Walmart Responsible AI Pledge. Are you able to tell us a little bit more about what that is and how it works?
Sure, absolutely. And I'm going to just look at my notes to make sure I get all the principles correct, because there are many of them. But it really builds on work that we've done in both our Walmart values, but also it follows on global data protection standards and norms. And transparency and accountability and fairness are kind of at the core. So the same kind of screen we would put towards any new technology, we looked at our potential uses and our current uses of AI and said, what are the kind of promises we want as our North Star to the customer, but also writing these down is a way to help educate internally as well. So I think a huge part of my job is not only talking to customers and talking to people outside the company, but how do we educate and inform our own associate, our own employee population, particularly in the technology organization, on what is expected of them. What is expected of them as they're building new tools, as they're deploying new tools? What should be the things, I will say, in the back of their minds, or what's going to make the hair on the back of their head stand up and say, am I doing that right? Is that the right thing to be doing, in the world? And so we set about, again, in partnership with our global technology partners, the people who run our technology systems all around the world, to think about what are the core values of Walmart, how do they translate to the AI world, and how do we put them down in plain language that will really resonate with the people both working on these systems and the people who are kind of impacted by them, again, who are customers, partners, vendors, and most importantly, our associates as well. And so they really do speak to the values that I think all companies should be looking at. And transparency, to me, is one of the core ones. People have a right to know that there's new technology that's adjacent to them, that's proximate to their person or to their world experience. Where that's particularly important to me is we all, I think, are somewhat aware of how websites work, right? You're online and you know that you're doing business with a company and you know that there's some data being captured, even if it's de-identified about you. But if you're changing the rules or you're changing the experience of the physical world for a human being, I think you have a pretty high duty of care to explain yourself. It's an educational opportunity. What I always say is it's a conversation with the customer. I think the more empowered they are with the knowledge of how the technology works, of what we're doing with it, the more confident they'll actually be that we are a company that is trying to do the right thing by them, and that we want to engage in this partnership and this dialogue with them on the use of their information, on the use of technology to make their life experience better. One of our mottos, as you know, is save money, live better. And part of living better as a busy working mother, as I am, is getting in, getting out, getting what I need in the store, getting home, making dinner. It's time is money, right? Time is value. And so we do efficiency and productivity through the lens, not only of our own employees, which is going to be a huge, AI and generative AI in particular, and we should talk about that opportunity, but in the lives of our customers as well. It's not respectful to, as I was joking, I told this story probably to you the other day, to have your device make you read 37 screens of text before you're able to do a transaction. That's not respect for individual. What respect for individual is giving you enough information to make an intelligent and educated decision about whether you want to move forward with the transaction or move forward with a partner relationship with a particular company. And so that's what we're aspiring to do.
Yeah, and transparency is a really key thing, actually, and particularly in the context of Gen AI. I think sometimes people can get a little bit confused about what the meaning of transparency is, because sometimes if you speak to a really talented data scientist, transparency to them means understanding how the weights in the model produce the output that they produce. But for the actual end user and for most people living their daily lives, transparency is a very different thing. They need to know if these kind of systems were involved in the decision-making process. They need to know roughly about how they've been put together at a high level of abstraction that they can understand. And they also need to know the purpose for which the system has been developed and deployed for. Like, they need to know, right, this works really well in this environment, and this is what it's been designed for. Don't try and use it in another environment because it hasn't been used well for that. So getting that right is critical. And actually, it goes to your point. I mean, one of the ways that you solve this question, right, is listening to your customers and listening very closely to your customers and making sure that you're solving the problems for them in the right ethical way. I think everyone's not going to go too far wrong if we take that approach to this kind of powerful technology.
Yeah. Customer centricity, human centricity. We always say we are people-led, tech-powered, and not the other way around, right? That as long as I always say keep the humanity and the humility in the technology development, and you will, be driven in the right direction. But I love what you said. And transparency means a lot of things to a lot of different people, depending on how you're interacting with the technology, right? If you're a developer and you know what the codes and the weights of the algorithm mean, and you know how to kind of manipulate them, that's a different level of jargon, of detail, of technological knowledge. And you're right, that's not respectful to an individual who just wants to know, is this fair? What are you judging me about? What are the elements of this that I need to know about, and what's the outcome? And most importantly, how is that decision going to be used, either for me or against me? And I think that's something I think we've actually been on a journey about. There's been so much, and again, my background's been in privacy law for a long time. There's been so much fear of using data in the wrong way that people, I think, have felt stymied. And I said, listen, that's not respectful either, because customers who have given us their data, they trust us to keep it safe, and they trust us to use it to their benefit. And there's a whole school, we should talk a lot actually about the law and whether it should change and whether law is enough as it is, or but there's this whole school of law about fiduciary duty of data, right? Am I holding this in trust for you? Do I have rights as a bank does? I mean, the bank uses your money while it's in the bank, and it makes an profit off of it. But at any time, you can go and ask for your money back, and you get your interest too. So it's a shared value proposition. The bank's getting some value, and you're getting value because you get to put it somewhere safe and have it gain interest. What is the shared value model of data? And does the company have some rights in it? I think that obviously the person whose personal data it is has the primary rights in it, and they have given it to us in trust for certain uses. And as long as those uses inure to the benefit of the individual and not against their rights and rewards, then then it can be a shared value model. But it's a constant dialogue, and expectations are changing. And as you point out, we have to stay very close to the customer. In my role, I spend a lot of time talking to our customer care people and our customer facing teams, because I really want to know. And I said, listen, I want to know the minute if you hear the slightest concern or complaint or question, our team has worked with them to say, here's how to respond, and here are what the answers are, and we want to know because we want to make our program better and better. And I get emails right from the CEO and from senior executives saying, I just got this question from this customer, and I want to know what our answer is, and that's great. It's a very highly engaged leadership team, and very highly responsive to individual customers and to associates. So it's a fun part of the job. It is a really challenging part of the job, and it's a life lesson for, I think, everybody. The longer I'm in this role or in other roles, I understand that the communication of these ideas is almost as important as the idea itself. Meaning, if you're not making yourself understood, then you're not doing a service to your customer. If you're using too much legal jargon or technology jargon, and at its core, it's about communicating fairly and transparently at the right level of detail for the audience.
I completely agree, and I think this is something the community generally is starting to wrap their head around. There's been some great sort of initiatives here. Like I think of like the model cards and the dataset cards, which have become quite ubiquitous now across the sort of AI space as a way of like bite-sized chunks of understanding what goes into an AI system and what makes it up and how does it look. But I suppose that one of the really interesting things about this space is the speed at which it's developing. We spoke very briefly about generative AI, but almost every day there's a new incredible capability in this. So how do we almost like future-proof this so that our approaches today that we have today, we know can scale to the technologies of tomorrow so that we're well set up to deal with it over time rather than just at a point in time?
Yeah. This is what keeps me young, right? It's constantly changing. You never know what you're going to get when you wake up in the morning. It's at work. But it also leads us to the conversation about law and governance and structure. It is moving so fast. And so I think it's really a question of, do the first principles, whether it's your country's law or the company's code or, your company's stated values and guidelines, do they give guidance to the customer or the associate, that's what we call our employees, obviously, such that they can get up in the morning and know what is expected of them? That, we can't possibly even predict today what the 10 uses are that are going to be thought of in the next week. So we can either stand in the way and say no, which is not the position I want to be in, right, of progress, or we can say your primary purpose is to, first do no harm, right? Do no harm to any humans, but also, is this fair? Is it, again, back to the 4 core Walmart values, service, integrity, excellence, and respect. And we've rewritten those, we've reimagined them for the tech world, that the technology shall be in service to humans. It should not be, again, against humans. It should be excellent. It should be secure. How do we reimagine those words that made sense in the physical world into the digital world? And then looking at particularly in the AI space, the core data protection values and principles, and then set people free to innovate. Right. And so it's kind of the ex ante versus ex post enforcement approach, right? The ex ante is, here are the values, here's the structure, here are the guide, like kind of here's the, let's say the box, I want to keep people within the lines, but here are the guardrails, don't go too far this way, don't go too far that way, but keep as your North Star, respect for individual and fairness, and then run. And then, come ask questions as you're developing and iterating. The good news is we're drawing fairly within the lines because it's all about, innovation and respect in the context of our corporate structure and what we're doing and what we're trying to serve. And we do hear in real time from the human beings who are our customers. So there's a constant feedback loop as well, which is really, really helpful. But I think there are some use cases in the government space and in other spaces that have incredibly consequential impacts on human beings and that need to be really, really thought through before they're deployed. And in the Gen AI space, I think people are still struggling with, what is it? I had to start with the dialogue, again, with our customers and our associates, that first of all, it's not alive. It does seem like it's talking back to you, but it's not really alive, right? It's just large language models with algorithms saying this word goes after this word because in the last 20 times I've seen that word came next. And so it's not as smart as it thinks it is, right? There's not as smart as you think it is, really, is the issue. And so how do we help? And again, it's a huge educational opportunity and challenge. How do we help people know what it works for, what it's good for, and what it's not good for? What are the limitations of these tools? And I think, I don't want to say that kind of the bloom is off the rose, but I think people are kind of now settling down into, okay, it's good for some things and it's not so good for other things. And partly we've seen it a little bit by trial and error. And I don't know if you've seen this where you are, but in the United States, there have been a handful of cases of lawyers who have written their briefs for courts using generative AI tools, and they have gotten themselves into a world of trouble. And what I mean by that is literally, I've seen 2 or 3 cases that have been in the press with lawyers who have filed briefings that have citations that are completely imagined. I had another not nice word to say actually about what they were, but they were not true. Let's just put it that way. We call them hallucinations, as you know. I call them lies. And my boss, who's a very brilliant woman, says, you can't ascribe that kind of human intent to the tool. No, it's not a lie. I didn't know it's lying. It's just not true. So they're literally made up citations to cases that don't exist. And it's really wild to read this stuff, right? Because it looks on its face like it's true. And it sounds so rational, and yet it's not. And so it's really good for people to probe kind of what the extreme use cases are, but to know, and how do I help people understand what some basic guidelines are? One of my technologists said to me, it's a good first draft. And I thought that's a great way to look at it. Like, what are the simple phrases I can have people keep in the back of their mind to say, okay, here's a use case. It's good for a first draft of an email or a letter, or some really early exploratory inquiry around. I mean, I use it all the time. I've used it several times to say, I'm going to Italy on vacation. Where should I go in Rome? Like, these are great things, because the consequences of me getting this wrong are pretty low. I'm going to have a good time in Rome, wherever I go out to dinner.
Yes.
But you don't want to do it for a high consequence plate unless you have double and triple and quadruple fact checked everything in there. And so again, great first draft, great for idea generation, great for dialogue. I think it's particularly helpful for people who either get writer's block or don't feel like a very gifted writer, because a lot of the writing, although it sounds like it was written by a robot, is actually pretty good, and most of the stuff is spelled right. But you cannot rely on it in total. You must take responsibility for it as your own work. And that's my second kind of rule of thumb for folks operating within the company is, it's your work. You can't go back to your boss and say, Gen AI wrote this. Like, it's your work. It's like handing in a term paper in college. And that's actually there's a huge academic, brouhaha in the United States, at least, about folks using Gen AI and whose information is it, and who's really the author, and how do you cite check, check those things, and it's a kind of an ethical issue. I think, like, I'm kind of a little bit hardcore on the plagiarism issue. Like, it's not your work, and it's not your original idea if the chat came up with it. But as far as fact checking goes, you are responsible for it, and so there are some serious consequences if you put in something that has financial consequence to your company, or factual consequence for your boss. You must absolutely fact check whatever's coming out of the tool. The converse of that is, beware what you put into the tool. My big fear right now, where I'm sitting today, is there's not just personal, it's not only personal information, it's strategic or company or financial information that you, and I'm talking to everyone in other companies as well, need to be worried about your employees putting into these tools and where it comes out on the other end. And even if they don't think anyone will ever figure out it came from, Acme Tool Company, somebody might be able to figure it out. It's pretty easy to re-architect some of this data if you ask enough questions of the tool. And so I worry, and we obviously try to mitigate that risk by using walled gardens and our own internal tools. And there's lots of good ways. And again, we have the luxury of doing that because of our size. But I worry greatly about kind of data drain and risk to the enterprise in the leakage of consequential or strategic information. So lots of opportunities, but also lots of risks.
Yeah, but then that surely is a good case for regulation, and good quality regulation to be introduced. If the legal historian in me has gone back through time and looked at a bunch of different things over the years, and generally the pattern is pretty repeatable. There's a technological breakthrough, and sometime after that, it might be a long time, might be a shorter time, but sometime after that, rules are introduced on how to play the game. Are we now in that phase where we're needing a bit more rules to play this game? And you're seeing initiatives, of course, like the EU AI Act, and again, if you look back at the legal history of this, like some of the laws around other technological advancements were not welcomed at the time, but now are essential to how we live our lives.
Right.
Do you think this will be seen in the same way? And do you think we need more? Is this the starting point, the ending point, or where are we on that journey?
I absolutely agree with you with the whole kind of arc of history and the arc of introduction of new technologies. And that pattern, I think, actually repeats over a number of different areas of the law, not only tech and data and the internet environment, but I have friends who have transitioned from environmental lawyers to internet lawyers. I'm thinking of one in particular, a very prominent attorney. And the arc of that was, there was pollution in the environment. There was harm caused by institutions, enterprises. At first, the attempts were made in this country and in others to do self-regulation and kind of self-awareness of the enterprises and the private sector, and that was proved to be inadequate to create the kind of controls in the environment that was necessary. And so it's the arc of kind of introduction of the risk, application of the risk, self-regulation failing, and the need to adapt law. And so, yes, you're right. We're kind of like halfway, around the rainbow of this in tech and data. I worry sometimes about legislation that is too tech specific, because by the time it gets introduced and passed, at least in the United States, maybe not so much in other countries, it's almost out of date the minute that the ink is dry on the paper. So I want to do, again, more the high principled, like, this is not okay to ever do to a human being, no matter what the technology is that you're using to do it. And again, we have laws on the books about discrimination, about fairness, and about transparency, and that sort of thing. We do not have, and I know everyone listening is aware, a comprehensive United States federal privacy law, and I still believe that one will be passed in my lifetime. And apparently, I should be careful about saying that the older I get, but but I still believe. And I think we're at like 12 or 13 state laws that are fairly comprehensive privacy laws now. And I think another almost dozen coming in the next year. So what we're probably going to end up with is some version of what we have in data breach and data security, which is 48 or 49 or maybe 50 state laws that all look a little bit different from each other, which is not a great model for a multinational or for, frankly, a national company, because some of the laws actually contradict each other, and that's not great for the customer or the company, but that's a whole nother story. But yes, it is part of the arc, I think, of technological innovation. You go back to the automobile, and trains and the Industrial Revolution, right? There's the introduction of the thing. The thing hurts some people. The thing has to be regulated. Like it's so, I liken data loss and data breach and data misuse as somewhat the environmental pollution of the digital age. Just like that was the environmental pollution of the industrial age. And so we definitely have, we're trying to be a good actor, drawing within the lines now, and setting up systems that will really be durable and will endure, well within and beyond the changing vagaries of the regulatory space. But because we think we're doing the right thing for the human beings who are impacted by the systems. If everybody behaved that way, then we wouldn't need as much law, but that's not the case. So I absolutely agree with you that this is it's yet another case study in the speed to adoption and making mistakes along the way. And we see human beings make mistakes as well as institutions, right, in their use of these technologies.
Yeah, I'm very glad you mentioned the privacy law as well, because there's a lot of analogies here between the introduction of the likes of GDPR and then all the state level laws in the US and what is now happening in the AI space. And from our perspective, we see we talk to a lot of folks every day who are privacy professionals that are now learning new things about AI governance. So I think there's a lot of transferable skills here, but there are some important differences as well. So what do you think? What could like a privacy pro listening to this do you think, to maybe gain the extra skills? What extra skills do they need, and how do they go about gaining those to make sure that they're fit for this next wave of evolution?
That is such a great question, and it's really a roiling debate here in the United States too, about whether this is AI and emerging tech is the province of a privacy professional or a data governance professional or or a technology risk professional. I have never narrowly defined the job of chief privacy officer, even when I had it. So I've always thought it was about looking around corners and looking holistically at the risk. And as you and I have discussed in the past, there are many companies that have been doing this really effectively in Europe and in the United States and around the world, really, who look at digital risk comprehensively. And to me, that is where the ball is going. So to too narrowly focus on one sector of laws is to ignore the fact that these new technologies have a wealth of opportunity and a wealth of risk associated with them. And as again, you and I were talking about, there's an environmental impact to increased use of generative AI and AI tools and of other tools. And the companies that are buying new energy sources and setting up new energy sources to support their operations are proof of that there is, that's a dialogue to be had, and that is a risk to be acknowledged and mitigated in the evolution and adoption of new technology tools. So I would say that to a privacy professional who wants to kind of grow their expertise and their remit, job one obviously is understanding how the technology works. And it doesn't mean I don't have a PhD in computer science. I don't, but I am willing to dig in and learn and ask the hard questions and spend the time studying and understanding how the technology really works, so that I'm neither afraid of or bamboozled with, admiration by a new technology. So that to me is job one. You can't opine on it if you don't actually know how it works inside and out. And I mean by that, enough to know how the operations are inside, but also how it impacts human beings in its end result. The second is to think more broadly. I don't think we have the luxury anymore, in any of our internal governance operations in the company, of only looking at one lens of impact of a new technology or a new innovation. I think you've got to be agile and to be fast moving and to be a good ride along with your business partners. You have got to stand back and say, okay, here are the 10 things wrong with that, or here are the 20 things that are good about it, or here's how I'm going to kind of risk evaluate the positive and the negative, and I'm going to mitigate where I think the greatest risk is. But to just say, okay, well, it narrowly complies with privacy law in this state. It is a necessary but incomplete answer. It's necessary because you obviously want to get the right answer and abide by the law and do the right thing under the privacy laws. But sometimes it's okay to do, and it's not the right thing to do. I'm a big fan of saying, I know we can do that, but should we do that? Is that actually a really good idea for the company or the customer? And the should we is, ethical, it's reputational, it's impact on the larger company. It's how does it fit within the overall expectations of the customer, of their relationship with the company? And is it, it's a good use of resources? Sometimes I find myself sometimes spending a lot of time on projects that I probably don't add as much value as they really should overall, when there's some quicker, easier wins that could be gotten. So I think that the call to action for privacy professionals is yes, you have to know your privacy law. Most importantly, you have to know how the technology actually works and what the data is literally that is being collected, and does all the ordinary rules apply of transparency and fairness and the like. But then it's also, what's the bigger picture? Is this the right thing to do in the world?
I love it. I think that's super helpful advice. It's such a broad surface area of risk, digital risk, that businesses now face, and each aspect of that broad surface area is actually very diverse. Learning these different things, building on the knowledge that you already have around risk management, but taking into account of the unique specificities of the technology itself and how it can be implemented in the world and enacted. Super helpful advice. You heard it here first. To round it out, I have to ask, because I know a load of our listeners will be dying to know, and I left it right to the end. Nuala, you've got a very special connection back to Belfast City, where we as a company, Enzai, are currently headquartered and very proud of. Are you able to share a little bit with of that link with the listeners?
Oh, Ryan, and I'm going to come visit. I want to see the offices. I'm absolutely going to come visit. I am proud to say I was born in Belfast, Northern Ireland. I lived there for a time. My entire extended family is still in Belfast. My mom's family is from the Falls Road. My father's family is from Ardoyne, so Andersonstown and Ardoyne. 100 and something first cousins, if you count both sides of those families, and been back many times. And it's a beautiful city. It's a great city. I'm proud of my heritage and of my family that's still there, and of my family that's in the United States. And yes, so very close connection. Very proud of you, Ryan. Thrilled for you personally and professionally that you took the jump from big law, which we both did, and I'm sure we're both happier for it. And I think it's an incredible innovation center in the North, and I hope it continues to be so for a long time.
Oh, I love it. And you're very welcome in our offices in the Belfast at any time. So we'll have to arrange for that. Listen, that's all we've got time for. I just want to say a huge thanks. No, this could have gone on for hours, quite frankly, and it was really hard to keep it to the time slot, but I'm glad we did. It was such a pleasure having you on, and everyone else, thank you very much for joining us, and stay tuned for the next one.
Thanks so much, Ryan. Take care.